Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, staying warm?
We're going to Arizona in like 3 weeks, right? So I'll just, soak up the cold right now and then stand in the sun and it'll all be fine in just a few weeks.
Are you allowed to bring up the fact that you're going to be warm in the next few weeks? Because I am not allowed to talk about it.
No. Well, I think my wife is less concerned about that and more like, oh, so I get to drive back from the East Coast with 2 kids after Christmas without you. Cool.
It'll be fine.
That's what I'll tell. That's what I said. And that doesn't always paper over everything, but, I'm sure this time it'll be fine.
Yeah, there's not much you can do about it other than just go on and then laugh about it in 6 months.
Sorry, it's for work.
Exactly. The end-all, be-all of excuses. It's bowl season, just about. But before time we can get to bowl season, there's the coaching hot stove league that we should probably discuss, even though Ryan Day was kind of definitive, but not that he didn't expect anybody to be leaving, because we're still kind of confused about exactly what his words were. That one day when asked if there would, it was mentioned, he's like, he didn't foresee it, or it was definitive, but I don't know that it was just odd.
Yeah. It was like he didn't expect anyone necessarily to leave, but, he knew, everyone understands, if you do leave, you have to finish the job here first, was basically the gist of it. So, But nobody's going to be leaving. But if they do leave. Yes.
So right now, the hot rumor is Jeff Hafley to Boston College, which we may have talked about a little bit here to this point, but really haven't discussed it in great length because I don't think either of us think it's going to happen. Not because it couldn't happen, but more because it would be odd if Jeff Hafley, after 1 year, decided, you know what, this is the job that I came to Ohio State for, is that Boston College head coaching job.
Yeah, I mean, he's an East Coast guy. He's from Jersey, which, I know people in Ohio, it's just kind of like all those states are just small, so everything must be like 15 minutes from each other. Like North Jersey and Boston, that's like 3-4 hours away. So it's like, it's kind of in the same region, but it's not, it's not like this is the town where he grew up. And the Boston College job, I guess, it's a P5 job, but you're in the same, I know one of our, running gags is that no one knows what division anyone in the ACC is in. I actually looked this up. I was pretty sure I was right about this. That's the same division as Clemson and Florida State and Louisville. So you're probably, at best, the 4th best job in that division. In NC State's, never great, but they can always kind of recruit decently enough to have some players. So you're probably capping out at, even best case scenario, you're kind of capping out at 10-2 there. It's
funny that you mentioned the 4th place team in that division when before the show I said, why not wait till next year and get Michigan State or something like that? Because Michigan State is the 4th team in the East of the Big Ten, but I still view it as a much better job than Boston College. Mainly because it's in the Midwest and stuff in the East isn't as important football-wise.
Well, and you have a better recruiting base in, Michigan State. If you can recruit the second-tier kids out of Ohio, don't let Mark Stoops in Kentucky get the kids from Ohio that Ohio State doesn't want. Go get them. Michigan State should hire Jeff Hafley. That would be an extremely good hire for them. And I guess they're hanging on to Mark D'Antonio for one more year because reasons, but
not because of reason.
No, reasons. I don't quite get that one at all, but I guess he's earned whatever, he's earned the right to ruin that program for one more year by being stubborn and stupid and not doing anything.
Jeez.
Well,
he's only the greatest coach in school history.
You can look at the year they had last year and then keep all of your offensive assistants, and then tell someone that it's the dumbest question you've ever heard if he regrets doing that. It's like, okay, you can be like super tough guy, but then when you just turn into like fail coach for a year, I'm going to call you fail coach, because that's what you are.
Well, and once you lose the media like in East Lansing, it's going to be tough to get them back. And when you do treat them that way, and because he's a gruff guy regardless. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so when you cover him, you're probably trying to find the best sides of him. But then when he is like that to a legitimate question, like, do you regret or not changing anybody or not getting rid of anybody? And he tells you that that's, a silly question or whatever. That's, to me, he's not just lost like the media or whatever. He's lost touch, and maybe he feels like he's beyond answering questions or being held responsible. Like he is above being held responsible, which is not the case when you're only winning 5-6 games a year now.
Yeah, I mean, 4 or 5 years ago when they were winning the Cotton Bowl, like, yeah, sure. Okay, you have earned the right to. Mm-hmm. That's like Pat Fitzgerald. Like, you have earned the right to, be kind of above reproach for a little while. But once your offense starts crapping out the year it had, like, it is a legitimate question to say, hey, the guy who's been your offensive coordinator for a long time, who's been terrible for a long time, what are you going to do about that? And then if you're going to do the my email address is hashtag I don't care or whatever his answer was there, like, at that point, like, okay, if that's how you want to play this, that's fine, but you're gonna get some blowback on that.
Yeah, and it would be perfectly acceptable for the athletic director to be like, you know what we would like, coach? We would like an offense next year. Mm-hmm. And if you're not going to go get a coach who will provide that offense, because there are 1,000 coaches out there who can provide offense. If you're not interested in doing that and you just want to be with your buddies, you can do that at the lake. Mm-hmm. You don't need to be doing that in our football facilities. And we appreciate your time, but we would like for you to retire. And if he doesn't want to, then you know what you can do? You can fire him. And then go get somebody who is a believer in offense. And Tom, I know a lot of people, maybe guys like Mark D'Antonio don't believe this, but you can be an offensive guy and a defensive guy.
Really?
You can want both. And if you look in the playoffs right now, the Fiesta Bowl, for instance, you have both. Mm-hmm. And if you were wanted to look for a quick 1-year turnaround, you can look at LSU for an offense. Mm-hmm. Look what Joe Brady did for Joe Burrow and that offense, for the entire program of LSU, which has been years and years and years of underachieving. And you bring in one guy and he puts it all together. And I'm not saying Joe Brady could do that at Michigan State, but somebody could do something and it would be better than what is going on now. And weren't we talking about Jeff Hafley?
We were talking about Jeff Hafley. So anyway, TLDR, Jeff Hafley should not take the Boston College job, and not just because I want Jeff Hafley around because he's an entertaining interview.
Right.
He certainly, like, I get it. Like, if your dream is to go back to the East Coast and you want to be a head coach, like, yeah, that is the best head coaching job in the Northeast, probably. North and east of Penn State, that's the best head coaching job in that region. There's just, I think he can do better. And if it was Al Washington, where he's like coached there before and has like real ties there, played there, like, I get that. Hafley, like, I don't know. I see him being able to get a better job this time next year, because this Ohio State team is going to be pretty good next year too. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and we believe he is a good coach, so he should be able to coach up the players that they have next year as well,
right?
To be prominent players. Now, if you watch Jeff Hafley's Broyles Award speech, he didn't win it. Joe Brady won it, but some of the guys came up and gave speeches. I think maybe they all did, but he got up and started talking about coaching, and within like 5 or 10 seconds, he had to stop because he almost brought himself to tears just talking about coaching. And then he went on to say, I wanted to be an NFL coach, then an NFL head coach, never expected to be in college. And then, he gets this Ohio State job, or never expected to come back to college. Mm-hmm. gets this Ohio State job, and you realize, how you can turn around people's lives. And Jeff Okuda, said in a team meeting that Jeff Hafley changed my life. And so that's a powerful thing. It's an emotional thing. And he was breaking down during this entire speech, and it almost felt like it was a speech from a guy who was saying goodbye to Ohio State at that time, Tom.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, you can certainly read it that way. I wonder about him and being a teacher. Like he talks about himself as a teacher. He seems like he has taught the players in his care this year extremely well. You don't get to do that as a head coach. No. You're the CEO. Like you're out doing the booster stuff. And I mean, that's what Ryan Day's talked about. Ryan Day's probably more involved with positions and the offense than most head coaches would be, but he's still like, you're not sitting in the QB meeting room every single time there's a QB meeting. Jeff Hafley will not be sitting in the DB meeting room every time there's a DB meeting next year if he's the head coach at Boston College or somewhere else. I wonder if that teaching component is something that would be hard for him to let go of. That could be something that could be a little emotional. If you've kind of reconnected, like you've sort of rediscovered your love of doing this, and it's like, well, now I have to give that up again to do this other thing that I kind of want to do at some point. Like he's going to be a great head coach at some point. And if it's at Boston College next year, that's certainly, I mean, that's in the same way that Ohio State fans are rooting for Joe Burrow at LSU, I'm sure, and at Luke Fickell at Cincinnati, I'm sure there are going to be a lot of Ohio State fans rooting for Jeff Hafley if he's the head coach somewhere next year.
Yeah, and I remember going back to media days when I was asking some of the Big Ten head coaches what do they miss most about being an assistant coach, and some of those answers were simply coaching. Mm-hmm. Coaching those position guys and being with them and teaching them, and you don't get to do that when you're a head coach. You have to find other ways to be able to do that. And that's something where, you like you said, Tom, you just get back into it. I think it would be hard to give it back up and then go be a head coach when, maybe you do this for a few years. Nothing bad can come from it. Mm-hmm. Only good. It's like saving money up for, something bigger down the road. And, I don't want him to go yet either because he's fun to cover.
Yeah. I mean, and we're about to transition to another guy who's fun to cover, who has been here for a few years, Kevin Wilson, who's been linked to the Colorado State job. There was a Football Scoop report about that. He's a guy who left Indiana under kind of like weird circumstances, did a few years in Urban Meyer's Home for Wayward Boys, and now is ready to go out and run his own program again. But he's a great example of someone who, like, the power of sticking it out and staying somewhere for a few years, because he's demonstrated kind of that consistency. Yeah. Where I think that's something that you saw at a different context with Lane Kiffin, where he just got the Ole Miss job. He went to FAU, had one great year, and everyone was like, oh, he's going to jump now. Right. And then he waited, and I don't know if he waited of his own volition or because there wasn't another job out there. Had kind of a down year for the second year, and then for the third year at FAU, had a huge year again, blew out UAB in the CUSA championship game, and now he's an SEC head coach again. Kevin Wilson has been the offensive coordinator at Ohio State now for 3 years, and 3 years. You made a face, but yes, 7, 8, 9. Yep. So 17, 18, 19, he's been the head coach at Ohio State. They've run a couple different offenses. He has shown the ability to adapt his system to his personnel. And he's had extremely good personnel all 3 years. Let's be clear about that. But they have generated consistently excellent results. And it's not just, the one trick pony thing. He didn't just do it 1 year and, then vault and then just, bounce. He has demonstrated it over this course of 3 years. That makes you a more appealing candidate.
Yeah. And there is some value in bringing in head coaches who have kind of been fired or let go, because they will stick it out longer because they don't really necessarily have anywhere to go. Like wherever Chris Ash ends up, is going to be good for that head coach because It's not like teams are going to be clamoring for him to be a head coach. Now, they may be willing to pay him more than you are to be his defensive coordinator a year later. But there's definitely value to bringing these guys in, especially when you have the head coach experience. They're probably not going to be leaving anytime soon. But 3 years in, you have been able to show that, I have this ability, and he wants to get back to doing this, to being a head coach. And he's talked about it. He was never sure if it would happen again. This is a situation where guys have made stepping stones from this job, Colorado State, or it's also a place that people who have been there love it and would be willing to stay there. And he's a guy you could see maybe this is his last head coaching job. Yeah. So he would be willing to, put in 7-8 years or whatever, and then perhaps groom his replacement even, which that's kind of sets you up. If he is the right guy and he is able to build this program up, or even take it to, it's been built up. Yeah. They have the facilities and they've got a new stadium to where maybe they can make it even something like a Boise State type of thing, or, just a contender down the road every year, and maybe when there's playoff expansion, that whole thing. Yeah. But he's definitely, I think it's time for him to get back into it. And I think he wants to. It's a good spot. Urban Meyer has been there. Like, Urban Meyer has vouched for Kevin Wilson, has vouched for Tony Alford, who was mentioned for the job earlier. It seems like this would be something he would kind of jump on.
Yeah, it was interesting because it seems like Urban Meyer has been very involved in that process, because 3 of the, I think, 5 candidates that they talked about, Kevin Wilson, Tony Alford, Steve Addazio, all off that Urban Meyer tree. I mean, that's, and Urban Meyer, if you don't remember, Urban Meyer was an assistant at Colorado State in the early 90s when Earl Bruce went there. Urban was a grad assistant under Earl in 1986 at Ohio State, and then Earl, once he got fired at Ohio State, coached at Colorado State for a few years in the early 90s. Urban was an assistant coach there. I think that's where he was when he said at the Rose Bowl last year, he told us a story about, recruiting in Southern California at some point and like going to the Rose Bowl when he was a real young assistant. I think he was an assistant at Colorado State at that point. So Colorado State, though, it's a program that you probably have not spent a lot of time thinking about as an Ohio State fan. Colorado State is actually legitimately one of the best Group of 5 jobs there is, because they just dumped a ton of money into building a new stadium. Fort Collins is a very pretty area. Colorado, like that Denver Metroplex, that's a growing area population-wise. You're in the Mountain West, so you've got Boise State to deal with, but there's not anyone else in that division, where the Mountain West Mountain Division, where there's just like a perennial power. You got San Diego State on the other side, and they've been kind of pretty good for a long time, but there's not like another team in that region that's just like a real powerhouse. So if you can kind of continue to build that program, you've got the facilities. That's a job that has some real possibility. And, maybe Kevin Wilson goes in there and he's their version of Frank Solich at Ohio. Yeah. Where he's, former Power 5 coach and, a little older. You go in there and you're not just looking to jump, because they've had a bunch of coaches jump in a row. They had Jim McElwain jumped. Yeah. Mike Bobo just got fired. I forget who was before McElwain, but whoever that was, I think, jumped somewhere too. And so you have the possibility of sticking there and really like building the program, putting your mark on the program, and turning that into what Frank Solich has done in Ohio, where Ohio was for a long time one of the worst P5 or Group of 5 teams in the nation. And Solich got there and then immediately upset Pitt his first year in overtime, and just they won their first bowl game, and then they won their second bowl game. The only hurdle he hasn't gotten over is winning the MAC, but he's won the division. Wilson is starting from a higher level than that at Colorado State. I'm talking as if he's already got the job. Yes, I know. He's not. If Wilson gets the job, you're starting from a much higher level than OU was, because Ohio University is like it's a nice school. It's got a nice little stadium, but their facilities aren't like anything spectacular there. Colorado State, you're like right at the top of the Mountain West in terms of facilities and stadium. Recruiting base is good there. Like, there's a lot to like about that job. That's a job, like all the stuff that we were just saying about Boston College, like, it's not great, and recruiting base, and, your division, all that kind of stuff. Like, none of those concerns with Colorado State.
They've thrown a ton of money in because they want to be more. They want to be this winner. And Kevin Wilson was a very good recruiter in Indiana. He had some of the Hoosiers' best recruiting classes. So, he's got some cachet. You think whatever offense he would like to run would work out there. And like you said, he uses what he has because he had Sam Bradford threw for 5,000 yards, had Adrian Peterson, had that dude rush for 2,000 yards. So he can do whatever you need. And I think that would be an interesting fit out there. But then you would have to replace him at Ohio State. And
yeah, I mean, that I think would be less of a concern than replacing Hafley, because you've got Yursich there, who I think has integrated pretty well into the coaching staff this year. You still have Ryan Day. You bump up one of your position coaches to an assistant offensive coordinator position or something like that, and you bring someone else on staff.
Because really you'd just be replacing the tight ends coach. Right. In theory.
Yes.
And they already have their last tight ends coach already on staff, and Tim Hinton, I'm not saying they would just put him back there, but, you've got guys like Brian Hartline. Does he get a bump? Tony Alford, can you give Brian Hartline a bump before you give Tony Alford?
Yeah. I mean, that's a question. And, Tony Alford is right now listed as the assistant head coach. Yeah. What kind of responsibilities does that really entail? Is that because there
the responsibility is cashing a larger check.
Yeah. There's kind of that perception because, every year these guys, if they have a good performance, they get a bump in salary. And sometimes you have to accompany that with a little title, shine up that title a little more, add another, comma and 3 letters of certification from some vague agency. Like, how much of that is real and how much of that is just, salary justification? I don't know exactly, but he has the title, and maybe you can, there's enough conversation within the staff that I don't know exactly how much difference it makes whether you have, maybe they're all co-offensive coordinators next year.
Well, and they always talk about how this is the most unselfish staff and yada, yada, yada. You remember when there was rumors that Luke Fickell was going to take Kerry Combs with him to be his defensive coordinator. So Urban made Kerry Combs assistant defensive coordinator, which was a position nobody even knew existed because it didn't. Yes, go on. Because it's either coordinator or co-coordinator. And even the co-coordinator thing has been, maybe like the last 15, 20 years that has come into vogue. But, you are now assistant defensive coordinator. It's like, but.
Assistant to the defensive coordinator. Yes.
And so, that comes with a bump, and that's what you have to do to keep guys happy. And there's plenty of money to do so.
Yes.
But you wonder, like, if you still have to keep these guys happy in terms of the offensive coordinator position is different.
Yes.
Now, but what does that entail? Because Ryan Day calls the plays. Yursich is like the passing game coordinator. So it wouldn't make sense necessarily to have Hartline and Yursich as co-coordinators. As we talk about Kevin Wilson, like he's already gone when that's not the case at all. And so maybe that would make more sense for Tony Alford to be like the running game coordinator, which I think he might already be, actually.
Maybe.
No, that's Kevin Wilson, probably.
Yeah, probably. So maybe Alford becomes the run game coordinator, and Hartline becomes the junior assistant vice deputy athletic director in charge of wide receiver performance, and
Luke Farrell is the tight ends player coach.
Yeah, there you go.
Perfect, done. So this is the month of December, and while we're talking about the coaching carousel, they are also out recruiting because signing day is a week from this Wednesday, so it is next Wednesday, the early signing day. 4 days after that, they then head out to the bowl game. So you'll have like the grad assistants, the QC guys are back in Columbus right now cutting all kinds of tape. Every down and distance situation Clemson has found themselves in, so that when the coaches, I picture it like this. The coaches are out recruiting now, and it's like they're out working late and they come home. They just want dinner right ready on the table. As soon as they get home, the forks and spoons better be in the mashed potatoes and the peas, sitting there waiting for them. And that's what the QC guys and the grad assistants are doing. So as soon as they get back, everything is there ready for them so that they can dive in, because they've got 3 weeks. They don't have much time to get ready for Clemson.
No, this is, and it's already a condensed, schedule because of the extremely late Thanksgiving this year. That meant that the Ohio State-Michigan game was the latest it could possibly be, which meant the Big Ten championship game was the latest it could possibly be. And early signing day is coming up on the 18th.
Yep.
So you only have 11 days between the end of the Big Ten championship game and early signing day. Really 10 days, because that game basically ended on the 8th. So you are in like hyperspeed mode. Ryan Day talked to us at 12:30 or so on Sunday after the playoff announcement. He was there for probably about 10 minutes, and then you started seeing pictures of him in recruits' homes popping up on Twitter like 2 hours later. Like we were told like he's going to talk and then he's got to go because he's got to go recruit. And they were not kidding. Like I think they had his car, warming up in the parking lot, ready to go.
As he's out recruiting, then he also has to do a teleconference at like 4:00 that day. So, you get out of one kid's home and then you probably sit in the car, heading towards the airport for somebody else, or you're driving to the next town. And what I liked is G. Scott's dad, he tweeted out a few days ago, like, we don't need to see the coaches. We're, go get somebody else, go get a teammate for us, because, we're set. And, you wonder, like, how many players can you be like, do you mind if we don't come? Because, and you can't necessarily do that because you want them to know that they are wanted. And you see them in homes of guys which you would never dream of them decommitting.
Right.
And they're just trying to get there. And it's interesting that they spend that much time on something that would seem to be a lock, and yet they're still doing it.
Well, that's just, I think, an attention to detail thing, where if you take anything for granted and then you lose a kid, a kid flips because he feels disrespected, I don't think there's anyone in this class that I would feel remotely concerned about doing that at this point. But, if you just take something for granted and then a kid flips and you lose them, then it's like, think about what you look like at that point. I mean, so it's a dot your I's, cross your T's, finish the drill. Finish, yes. Strain to finish. This is the recruiting, version of strain to finish. That's when we're watching practice, you will hear, Quinn Temple, who's, one of the, staffers on the mic, just strain to finish Jeff Okuda, strain to finish Rashad Berry. And it is a mantra in the program, like, finish the drill. Don't let up. Don't ease up before you cross the goal line. Finish the drill.
Yeah, this is like 4 to 6, A to Z.
Yeah.
It's from beginning to end. So that's what they're doing this month before they get to take a break and actually just coach the team. Yeah. Because there'll be practices where it's the grad assistants and it's the staffers who are coaching and getting everything done because the actual coaches are out and about. Now, Tom, while we're on this coaching tangent, and I know this topic you love, ESPN came out with the 150 greatest college football coaches of all time, because it's the 150th anniversary of the fake birth of college football. Mm-hmm. And so they've got a whole bunch of 150 lists, and this is the one that they released this week. And Urban Meyer, of the 150 greatest college football coaches of all time, Urban Meyer of
Fox Big Noon Kickoff. Yes, go on.
Of 3 national titles, ended up at number 46 on their list. And this list is by a blue ribbon panel, they call themselves, of a bunch of like some former coaches, some former administrators, Condoleezza Rice, and like 31 ESPN writers and some other writers from around the nation. And Urban Meyer, 46, one spot below Frank Beamer, who is a great coach. I mean, 150 greatest coaches, one of them, sure. In no world, first of all, no world is Urban Meyer the 46th greatest anything in terms of coaching. In no world is Frank Beamer ahead of Urban Meyer in college football coaching. And they played at the same time, or they coached at the same time. And Frank Beamer did great, but you put Urban Meyer at Virginia Tech, I bet he has a national title.
Well, and it's the argument there, I assume, was, well, Frank Beamer is a coach in much tougher places. Urban Meyer went 14-0 at Utah. Next.
Yeah, he was great at Bowling Green, great at Utah, great at Florida, great at Ohio State, and I think Lloyd Carr was at 50.
I saw that. I have not looked at this list because this is one of these things.
Yep.
Friends, let me share a little life hack with
Yes.
you. You should stop caring about nonsense like this because it is stupid and it has no impact on your life or anything real. And every second that you spend getting angry about something like this is just wasted energy and wasted time. Okay? So then Gerd sent me the list.
Yes.
And it wasn't even the full list. It was just kind of like certain names.
Yes.
Lloyd Carr, number 50, 4 spots behind Urban Meyer. I mean, like...
You know, if you want to put Lloyd Carr 50, that's fine.
I mean, he did win at a program with virtually no modern history of winning, so that's something. He won half a national championship in Michigan. That's not something anyone can do.
No, clearly he is the only one that can do that. But the top 10 was number 1, Bear Bryant. Number 2, Nick Saban.
Nick Saban, who is a contemporary of Urban Meyer, whose achievements are closely akin to Urban Meyer's. Yes, go on. And so he was 44 spots ahead.
Number 3,
yes,
Newt Rockne. Number 4, Tom Osborne. Number 5, Eddie Robinson. Number 6, Bud Wilkinson of Oklahoma fame. Number 7, Joe Paterno. Number 8, Bobby Bowden. Number 9, Woody Hayes of Ohio State. Number 10, Frank Leahy. Reading, now, I don't know if you saw this, Tom, because I was tweeting out the intros, because they wrote paragraphs on all of these guys. The one for Tressel mentioned how he won so many games, but some of them were removed. What's it called? Vacated. Woody, the opening line was like given to excess, and it's like the guy who turned down raises repeatedly. Okay.
Too many fullbacks?
Yes.
What was it?
Yeah. Given to excessive fullbacks.
Too many punches of players, like, agreed. Yes.
And then the one about Urban was, yeah, he's been great, but he's had program issues, but it's hard to argue his greatness. And then it's like, you know, they put him at 46. It's hard to argue. And so it was just interesting to see the little digs at the Ohio State stuff. No mention of, you know, Lou Holtz, who at number 23 left, I believe, 4
literally
programs
every program he coached
in
at.
NCAA sanctions, you know, either while he was there or after he was there. No mention there.
Bear Bryant, who had no social issues going on at all with his programs.
In fact, his bio said something, he turned boys into men. If they lived, basically.
Was contingent on melanin levels for a decent chunk of his career. Yes, go on.
So yeah, there's, you know, Joe Paterno did mention at the end the whole Sandusky thing. And,
that. Yes.
Just
that.
Steve Spurrier, number 27, who won how many national championships compared to Urban Meyer at the same school, Tom?
He won 1 and Urban won 2.
Now, is 2 more than 1?
I mean...
By a lot or just a little?
Maybe with your fancy math.
And it's... like, was this list just put together by Florida fans that they have Steve Spurrier so much higher? Because yes, Steve Spurrier won at Duke, and Steve Spurrier won-ish at South Carolina. Urban Meyer won at Bowling Green. Urban Meyer won a lot at Utah, won more at Utah than Spurrier did at Duke, and they're probably comparable programs at that time. And then you go on and does more at Florida than Spurrier did. For a longer time, like Spurrier was there for 7-8 years maybe, and then you go on to Ohio State and do what you do there, and he's 19 spots above Urban Meyer.
Yes, but Steve Spurrier is not on the Fox pregame show, so
well, yeah, okay, fair point. Francis Schmidt, number 125, John Cooper, number 97, Earl Bruce, number 107, Jim Tressel, 35, so that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Bo Schembechler, number 20. How many national titles again did Bo Schembechler win? I'm trying to think. Let me count them all up. This might take a while.
Rounding up, 0.
Oh, okay. So it won't take any time at all to count to 0. That is correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Bo Schembechler, number 20. And I get it because he is college football, but so are footballs.
Yeah.
You know, with the white stripe. That's college football as well. It doesn't mean it needs to be on the list. Number 20.
I'm not going to necessarily fight on Bo. Bo had Michigan playing at a level that they basically had not since Fielding Yost was there, more or less. And so, okay, like I get it. And he was like consistently a 10-win coach and in an 11-game season. Like that was like he would go 10-0 every year, and then it would be the Ohio State-Michigan game would determine whether they went to the Rose Bowl, and then he would lose the Rose Bowl every year.
What about Dabo?
Dabo was number 31. I mean, having him ahead of Urban is a little aggressive, I would say. Ahead of Urban's a little aggressive. Behind Spurrier is also like, really? I mean,
yeah, I think Spurrier's a little high.
Spurrier. I mean, I love Steve Spurrier.
Yes.
You know what Steve Spurrier's middle name is, right?
Effin?
Stephen Orr Spurrier. Yeah, ORR. Yeah, I mean, so
That's,
therefore he's a great.
There you go.
Also, I mean, his teams were just a lot of fun to watch. His teams were great.
Absolutely. But he also golfed too much.
Yeah, and he was just completely fell on his butt in the NFL. Yeah. But he, I don't mind Spurrier. Dabo, I think there's a case to be made that Dabo should be higher than 31. Just based on what he's built at Clemson. Because Clemson, you think about what Clemson was before he got there, and it was just, Clemson was basically, North Carolina State with a little more tradition when he got there. And like, if you had turned North Carolina State into a perennial national power, it'd be like, okay, yeah, that is clearly a great coach, and sustained it, not just like, did it once and then it was it.
Kind of like Tommy Bowden and Chuck Amato.
Yeah. And Tommy West. I mean, like there are a bunch of coaches there that just couldn't do it, and then Dabo has not just done it, but he's sustained it.
It took him a while, but then they actually stuck with him.
And there's plenty of objectionable stuff about Dabo that we can get into.
And then because the number 7 spot is Clemson steroids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's not true.
You said the quote. I don't know if it's not true. You just said the quiet part loud.
It's not on the list. That was just a joke. Tom, any other thoughts on this stupid list that you don't want to talk about?
I have no thoughts on this list whatsoever.
All right. I wanted to talk a little bit about Joe Burrow, but
who?
Joe Burrow. He's a quarterback for LSU. Not a lot of people listening to this show probably know who he is.
Are you thinking of Jordan Jefferson?
No. And I'm not thinking of Matt Flynn either. Joe Burrow, one-time Ohio State quarterback, actually for 3 years. And I'm seeing this so much backlash from LSU fans who don't like the fact that Ohio State fans claim him and or take responsibility for, like, he was good because he got developed at Ohio State. It reminded me of the whole Tom Brady, Michigan, Charlie Weiss thing when Tom Brady became good, like in 2000, 2001. And then when Charlie Weiss took over at Notre Dame, when Notre Dame fans would say that it was because of Charlie Weiss that Tom Brady was great, Michigan fans would say, no, it was because, he was great at Michigan because he was developed at Michigan. I don't know if they saw him at Michigan.
No, it's because of Scott Loeffler, you guys.
Yes. But also, I don't know that...
Ron Howard, narrator for this. It's never because of Scott Loeffler. Okay, yes, go on.
And I don't know that it could actually have been Charlie Weiss either, because I cannot picture that man developing a quarterback.
No.
So I think this is just a freak of nature, Tom Brady, which he clearly is.
Yeah.
He is responsible for Tom Brady, not anybody else. With Joe Burrow, I believe, credit Joe Brady for the offense. Credit Ryan Day, Tom Herman, Urban Meyer for molding Joe Burrow into somebody who can understand complexities. But Joe Burrow was, I think, always going to be Joe Burrow, and just he found this. He would have done what Justin Fields is doing.
Mm-hmm.
and now he's doing what he's doing at LSU. So I think Joe Burrow is responsible for Joe Burrow, and now he's in an offense that just takes advantage of the things he can do. I don't think it's, look what LSU did for him or developed him, or, Ohio State developed him. I think he took some from both places and is making the most of his opportunity now, and is naturally talented, is a heck of a leader, is an intense dude, is intense while he's playing, but he's kind of a goofball as well. Mm-hmm. I think he's just his own dude, his own guy, and, credit him more than anybody else, but Joe Brady's offense is kind of fun.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much exactly it. Joe Burrow was a supernatural athlete in high school. He, you probably are familiar with the story. He played at Athens High School, and I think it took a while for him to earn an Ohio State offer. But the numbers he piled up at Athens were just insane. The town where I live is also in the same division as Athens, and got Athens in the first round of the playoffs in Joe Burrow's senior year of 2015.
Oh my gosh.
And it was like, wow, they've had a good year this year. This is great. Let's see what they can do in the state play. Oh no. I think it was 62 to something at halftime. Joe Burrow was just Superman. And that was not a team where it was oh yeah, and then the top 3 wide receivers are also playing D1 football. No, that's just Joe Burrow as Superman. He very clearly has had this in him for a long time, and a year or two under Ryan Day certainly didn't hurt. I mean, Ryan Day has shown a pretty good ability to develop quarterbacks. So, there's plenty, when someone is playing as well as Joe Burrow, there's plenty of glory to spread around to everyone. And, Ryan Day has certainly shown that he can develop quarterbacks and probably deserves some of the credit. Joe Brady has done just fine down there. I'm blanking on the name of LSU's offensive coordinator last year. He was used to be their offensive coordinator, then went back to a line coach. There was an older guy. I can't remember his name for the life of me right now, but Joe Burrow was nothing spectacular last year. No. It was fine. So Joe Brady definitely deserves a good bit of the credit, and there is no shortage of credit being showered upon Joe Brady this year. So don't you worry about him. He's doing just fine.
Well, and the quarterbacks at LSU in the past have been woefully bad, underperforming. And so I think Joe Burrow was actually pretty good last year based on the history of the bad performances. But yeah, he wasn't nearly doing what he did this year. But I'm also kind of annoyed at this discovery of Joe Burrow, this kid that nobody wanted, this football orphan. Ohio wasn't good enough for Ohio State. He wasn't good enough for Ohio State because he was at Ohio State and he graduated from Ohio State and they did not want to lose him. And he had an offer from Ohio State. And no, Nebraska didn't want him. That's Nebraska's fault. That's the legacy that they didn't want. This poor kid. And it took LSU to bring out the best in him. I mean, LSU did bring the best of him, but Ohio State also would have if he wouldn't have transferred. And he's plenty good, as evidenced by what he's doing. He's not this, remember the Tim Tebow commercial from a few years ago? Nobody thought I could do it. Dude, you were a first-round pick.
Right.
You were a high school All-American. You were a 5-star.
Yeah. And in the alternate world where Joe Burrow stays at Ohio State, and, maybe if Joe Burrow knew that Dwayne Haskins was going to be one and done, that he might have stuck around at Ohio State to start this year. So if he does, and Justin Fields transfers to LSU instead of Georgia, then guess what? Both teams are probably doing just fine this year. You can discuss whether, one guy has slightly better stats in that circumstance than other or whatever, but I think there's a pretty good chance that both of those guys are at least Heisman finalists. Both of those guys are probably in the playoff. It has worked out just fine for Joe Burrow. It has worked out just fine for Justin Fields. And if the circumstances were different, it probably would have worked out just fine there's an argument to be made that Joe Burrow would be better at Ohio State just because he would have been in the system for so many more years. It's not his first year with Brady.
It's just amazing that they were able to find a bassinet large enough to put Joe Burrow in when they put him on the doorstep at LSU and abandoned him.
There was, I don't even remember who it was. It was someone, and I think it was a verified account. So it was like, this is not just some imbecile. This is some verified imbecile who's saying like, oh, 2018, Ohio State fans are like, oh, Joe Burrow's terrible. Like, go back and find me someone with more than like 23 followers who said Joe Burrow was terrible.
Was George Wrightster.
More like George Wrongster, am I right? Hey!
I wonder how many times he got that response, actually.
Ohio State really wanted Joe Burrow to stay. I mean, Joe Burrow leaving put them in a really crappy spot last year. Like, just purely from a numbers perspective, they wanted Joe Burrow to stay. And it's not even like they made the wrong decision last year. Who was better last year, Dwayne Haskins or Joe Burrow?
Dwayne Haskins.
So it's not even like Ohio State made the wrong choice.
Yeah.
They weren't picking, we're going to start Joe Bowserman over Joe Burrow.
Yes.
It's like, no, the guy who started over him was a Heisman finalist last year.
Yes, the greatest passer in Ohio State history.
Yes, and the guy who's starting there this year, also a Heisman finalist. Yeah. Like, you really can't argue it. And I remember talking to Joe Burrow in the locker room after the Cotton Bowl in 2017, and he said, I want to start somewhere.
Yep.
And it was just, that's what he wanted. And he found a spot where he could start. And there's a whole bunch of retconning on, everyone knew he was going to be a superstar. Go back and look at the schools he was looking at that point. It was like, what, North Carolina, Cincinnati, LSU. Yeah. And, LSU was the best of those schools, but USC wasn't knocking on his door.
No.
Was Tom Herman knocking on his door? No, he was not. No. I mean, Oklahoma, no. I mean, there are plenty of schools
they take all transfers.
Right. I mean, Oklahoma takes quarterback transfers literally every year. So, there's been a whole bunch of retconning about how everybody knew he was going to be a superstar at that point. Ohio State knew he was a very good quarterback. Ohio State knew he was going to fit very well in their system, and Burrow decided he really wanted to go start, and he did it the right way. He graduated, and that was the most amicable parting you could possibly have. Like, you have had guys transfer from Ohio State, and it's just like, all right, well, never see that guy again. Like, at the TCU game last year, they put the Joe Burrow Auburn LSU game up on the big Jumbotron. When Joe Burrow threw the winning touchdown pass, Ohio State players on the field went crazy, jumping around, going crazy. Like, everyone is rooting for that guy. So that will definitely stop if they meet in the national championship game. But right now, everyone is rooting for that guy.
Yeah, and he was another guy that was great to cover because he was always just open and honest. Like, how many players will talk to you openly about thinking of transferring?
Oh, yeah,
they don't, because they don't want to open up that can of worms. But he did it, and then he ended up transferring. So he pretty much called his shot.
Yeah, I mean, go back to our shows in like last April or so when we're talking about this. How unusual it was for a person to just not just kind of say the right thing and just like be real open about the fact that I'm thinking about it. Like, he is. I mean, guys talk about him being number one, funny.
Yeah.
Number two, like, kind of quirky, but just like just an individual, but just like a legitimately good dude.
Yeah.
He is not quite like everyone else, but he is.
But everybody loves him.
Everybody loves him. Yeah, everybody loves him.
Even when he came out with the Burrow spelled with the EAUX at senior day, and then Ed Orgeron was asked about it after the game, and he's like, Joe can do whatever. Joe can do what he wants. He's like, there's no rules for that guy. He can just whatever you want, do it. We trust you. You won't hurt us, but go be free. Here's some beads.
I really hope Ohio State plays LSU in the national championship, because I am going to make you do the entire week of podcasts in your Ed Orgeron voice. It's going to be great.
And then we'll get like stares if we just do it in random places. All right, let's wrap up. That'll go ahead and do it for this show. We'll get to basketball on the next show.
Oh, do they have a basketball team at Ohio State now?
Yes, in fact, by the time they play this next game, they could be number 2 or number 1 next week.
Yeah, number 1 Louisville lost on Tuesday night.
Yeah, so Kansas is ahead of them. Ohio State is number 3 right now. If Ohio State looks really good at Minnesota this weekend, perhaps the number 1 Buckeyes. But remember, just because you're number 1, at one point, the committee's still going to screw you out of it, man. Just like they screwed the football team. And don't ever like let your guard down, because ESPN's out to get you.
That's how you get shanked.
That's how you get shanked. So don't let the committee shank you all. And we will talk to you all later. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.